Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World. That's right. We're back. It's episode 87. Andrew and Jerry are back and better than ever. And Andrew and Jerry Save the World Election 2024 special. I'm Andrew Langer.
Jerry Rogers still.
And listen, it's an auspicious time, Gerald, because today we now have word that it is in fact a trifecta. I'm not ashamed to admit I was certainly nervous that Republicans were going to lose control of the House in this election, or at least in the last week. I thought that would sort of be the capper to all of this. Now the Republicans have control. They just can't mess it up, can they?
Uh, no, and it was a very funny headline at Babylon Bee.
Okay.
Republicans gather to discuss how to mess up the next 2 years.
I almost literally, I almost,
So,
I almost had a spit take. I
but
almost spilled
here's
coffee all
here's
over my computer.
let me lay down
Lay it down for me, buddy.
some optimism. So we're early still. It's only been a week since the presidential election, the elections. And the victory is still a resounding victory.
Right,
The popular vote, he's closing in on 75 million. He's
right.
over 50%. Now that might change a little bit because for some reason California and some other states are using ancient methods to tabulate voting. We have to do something about that. That's a
Oh
show for
yeah,
the future.
right.
But the fact is that popular votes in electoral college, I think, landslide, 27 governorships, legislatures turned over to the GOP. I did not think we would lose the House. I thought it would be thin. It will be thin. We flipped, or the GOP flipped, what, three or four Senate seats:
Yeah.
Ohio,
Hmm.
Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Montana. This is very significant. Here's why I'm optimistic, at least right now, a week later, because look who Donald Trump is surrounding himself.
Yeah. This is
Uh,
important.
I think his pick for the UN, I think his pick for Secretary of State, Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. There is no greater champion for the Jewish state. There is no more. There is no greater champion who wants to defeat
Right. Mhm.
Hamas. I mean, this is a great pick. Homan at as a immigration czar.
Hold on, hold on. Let's ping on Rubio for a second, Jerry, because we
Sure.
can go through we
But
go
this
through the
is
whole
why I'm
list.
optimistic
No,
that
no, no. Well,
he's
listen, no,
going
no,
to hit the
listen.
ground
I'm
running.
optimistic because I think I think that there were a lot of mistakes that were made early on in the last administration because of a lack of experience and because of the Democrats causing a great deal of chaos going into the election. But let's start. So I think they've learned from a lot of that. Marco Rubio is a deep thinker. He is a deep thinking Republican.
Yes.
He's a committed conservative. He's certainly not wishy-washy when it comes to those things. And so somebody thoughtful at state who understands what needs to be done, this is important. And I think this is a trend in so many of these picks. Now, I was a little surprised. And I'm not opposed. I want to be really clear about this about Lee Zeldin. I need to sort of
Yes.
learn more about.
An odd pick for EPA, but I think it shows that he's serious about bringing some conservative reform to the EPA.
Right, right, which is something, as you know, I've been working on quite a bit. But yeah, so Marco Rubio going there is an important that is an incredibly important move. As you were saying, Tom Homan going in, I think it's interesting. Kristi Noem going in, possibly at DHS. Mike Waltz going in as national security advisor, I think, is a great move.
Yeah.
But this idea of folks who understand what is happening with regards to the lapses in Homeland Security over the last almost 4 years, who have been dealing with the impacts. I think putting Kristi Noem in over there, this is an important, great step. And of course, Tom Homan, as you were talking about.
Yeah, and I also think that he's putting in MAGA, for lack of a better term, or GOP populists, those who understand that the Republican Party has realigned.
Yes.
The Democrats lost because they ran against America.
Right.
You can't win an election by hating Americans and hating America.
Let me take a slightly different tack on this, and let me set the Wayback Machine back to about 2013. 2013, we were about 2011 to 2013. We were, 2 to 4 years into the Tea Party movement, which began in 2009, and I began to see some real problems forming within the movement. The attacks on the organizations by the Obama administration, and a lack of definition as to what the movement was all about. Right? Everybody was sort of taking on this idea. There were all of these groups that were popping up to take on the Tea Party mantle. And I said, something, the Tea Party movement is really a movement about common sense. It is a common sense movement proposing common sense ideas. Now, I couldn't get any traction on this with some of the major organizations that were out there. I think what you're talking about, this concept of Make America Great Again, or the MAGA movement, I think is defined as a common sense movement. I don't think you have scads of Americans who all of a sudden woke up and decided that they were MAGA. But what they woke up and they realized is that we've moved away from common sense governance in America. And it gets into all of these discussions about I'm not going to say morality, but logic and common sense when it comes to
Well,
sexuality in
right.
America.
Again,
Go ahead,
to add to your point,
please.
the tip of the pyramid, so to speak, was the Democrats' uh, uh, dislike for the American people,
Right,
garbage, clingers, fascists. If you're against us, you're an insurrectionist. We got a steady diet of the Biden administration, his
right,
allies, the Harris campaign, dumping on Americans.
right,
And you can't win an election by dumping on the people you're trying to vote. But it's more than that. The realignment is deeper and will be long lasting, and that is the Democrats lost working people.
right.
They lost the blue collar, the hard hat, the
Dude,
entrepreneur. They lost those
listen, I don't
those
I
working
don't
people.
talk about things in terms of racial identity. They lost Native Americans,
Uh,
65 to
they
35%. I mean,
yeah.
which is just
Well, what
wild.
is it? What is it? What is that from? Charlemagne the God or whatever his name is.
Yeah,
He was shocked to know that 1 in 3 persons of color voted for Donald Trump.
right,
Nearly 50% of Hispanics, 13, 14% of African Americans, a solid segment of Asians, a majority, I think, of Indian Americans of Indian descent. This was a resounding victory
right,
on all demographics. Women, young people, Generation X delivered the election to Trump. But
right,
here's the thing. So we know who voted for Trump, which is pretty much everyone except people who had no religious faith
right,
and the billionaire class.
right,
The Democrats won the very, very wealthy, and they won the most anti-religious
right.
segments of our population. That's not a winning coalition. It's interesting too how there.
Or more to the point, anti Judeo-Christian Muslim religious, because again, you and I have talked quite, not that I'm going to quibble about this, Jerry. I'm sorry. It sounds like I'm quibbling, and I don't mean to,
Well,
because we're talking about
the people who go to
about
church or temple
earth
or
worship.
mosque. Yeah,
Yes.
people who go to a mosque or a temple or a church overwhelmingly voted for Donald
Yeah,
Trump.
Unitarians don't count.
Right. Those,
I'm sorry.
or Episcopalians.
Yeah.
But and those who never attend any religious community,
Yeah.
Harris overwhelmingly won that group.
Right.
I think it's interesting too. I think they doubled down on the wrong issues. Just two quick points. Number one, they chose the wrong women's rights issue.
Right.
Abortion more or less fell flat. Yes, abortion played really well in Maryland. And maybe it played well in Massachusetts and parts of California, but for the most part, it was a mixed bag of results. Pro-lifers had lots of victories, but overall, though, look at the popular vote, look at the electoral college, look at the legislatures, look at the governors, look at the members of Congress. Pro-lifers won everywhere, up and down. And
Yeah.
so the Democrats picked the wrong women's rights issue. What they should have chosen, and Bill Clinton ironically told them to do this, and they ignored him, and that is the boys playing in girls'
Right.
sports. That was the women's issue.
Right.
They should have, and you know what? And Trump was criticized because he was running ads on this, and the legacy media was like, "Oh my goodness!" And you know what? The Trump was right. This
Oh,
issue of girls being invaded,
I
their
agree.
spaces being invaded, is resonating among all groups,
Because
except for the hardest of hardcore progressives.
right, because at the end, right, we talk about these kitchen table issues, right? We talk about the issues of family and what's happening at home and protecting your families. Right. At the end of the day, the left can go on and say, well, this is very rare. We know it's not rare. We know it is happening in increasing amounts. It's making quite a bit of press here.
That's a new argument, by the
Right.
way.
Agreed.
The post election argument about the radical nature of transgender issues is, well, it's just a small segment of the
Right.
population. Well, yes, I agree with you. Then why are you allowing this small segment to upend everything from how we go to work and the sports we play, the restrooms we use? They allowed, again,
You're right. You're right,
the
Cherry.
conservative movement.
It's very rare
They raised the issue.
there's very rare that a
They
boy
forced it.
if a boy pretending to be a girl playing volleyball is gonna, bean some poor teenage girl in the face with a volleyball. But to that girl represents any of our daughters doing these
Yeah.
kinds of
But the
things. I
thing
mean,
is
that's the
that
thing.
is that they're right.
Yeah.
Conservatives or average Americans couldn't care less about this issue until they were made to care about this
Right.
issue.
That is what it comes back to, is that there is this rebellion against you will be made to care.
Yeah.
Right. Again, it reaffirms that Americans want to be left alone. Right.
Right.
And they want to be able to make decisions for themselves. They want to be empowered. And that again comes back to this issue. It's not that necessarily folks woke up and they're more conservative, or folks woke up and they're all
No.
enamored with Donald Trump, but it's common sense to them. Yeah, you don't have a boy pretending to be a girl playing against girls in sports. It just makes sense to them.
It's interesting. Kevin O'Rourke, who's a friend of ours,
Yeah.
of course, he went to the Bronx with us and will again for
Oh yeah.
the great Irish St. Patrick's Day celebration. But Kevin O'Rourke texted me when I was on the radio, and he said that Donald Trump's GOP, the Republican movement, conservative movement, that now represents the main highway,
Right.
and it's ideologically it's very diverse.
Right.
And however, the far extremists on the right and the left are on the shoulder. And
Yes.
that's what Trump did. Trump was able to push the extremists to the shoulder of the road.
Yeah.
And of all places, the American Conservative has a piece today that's, I thought, brilliant. Trump's victory is really a victory of liberalism. Because what won? Free speech won.
Right.
Regular order.
Hmm.
Making Congress do its job.
Right.
Respecting the autonomy and the independence of the judicial system.
Right.
What won? Not weaponizing the DOJ, the FBI, the intelligence communities, not using government to punish your enemies, like FEMA.
Oh my God.
Skipping over Trump
Let
supporters.
me hold on. Let me,
But just real quick on that,
because I want to stick. I want to.
Trump was lambasted because he claimed
It's exactly where I was
that.
going with this.
Well, you go ahead then.
No. Go ahead. You're
Right, the New York Times said Trump falsely claims and fact checked him, but turns out to be right. I'd be very
no,
interested.
hold on, because I think people need to understand it. In case you missed it, New York Times in October, in the wake of Hurricane Helene, and I don't remember what the other one was, but in the wake of these hurricanes, Trump made the claim in early October that FEMA was passing over areas that were largely Trump supporters, red state areas. And the New York Times said that Trump was spreading disinformation
Yeah.
about this. And of course, we now know a month later that Trump was absolutely correct. Jerry, you were on the air over the weekend after this story broke. This story didn't break until after I was done with the CBM show. I mean, you've got lefty listeners that call you. I mean, did anybody comment on this? Did you bring it up on Sunday?
Well, I mean, the from the left, it seems, well, everyone does this,
Yeah, got it.
and
Sure.
and
Right.
that's not true.
Sure. George W.
It-
Bush doesn't care about black
right.
people except that
It,
he does. Yeah, got it.
right.
I
But
understand.
here's the thing, and this is what bothers me. Two things bother me, and I hope we see an improvement in our public discourse. Number one, the legacy media. The legacy media will print things or claim things that are not true.
Right.
And then there's no real
Accountability.
accountability. Number one.
Right.
Number two is this idea
Hold on. Number
that
two is that the media says that what we're saying is untrue and it's disinformation. And then when it's proven to be true, there's no accountability. Sorry.
right.
Now, number
But
three,
but but
Jerry.
but also there have been some big stories that if it were any other
Then there's the double standard.
but it's worse than that. I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that FEMA was picking and choosing what houses, what homes, what families to help.
Right.
This ought to be a scandal of scandals.
100%.
And yet, I went through all the newspapers today, all the journals today,
Right.
I went through everything. I read, I'm telling you, 300 or skimmed 300 sites, venues, Substacks, etc. And it's nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, and
Even
that's,
even on
and
the right, even on the right,
And
there's no stories
that's
on
true. Well,
this.
yeah, because it's I mean folks have moved on and we can't move on. This is one of those areas where oversight is going to be vitally important. I think in addition to everything else that we need to do coming into the new administration, I think having some kind of a review, right? I've just put together, I am going to tout this, a list of 100 recommendations on the regulatory and administrative law front for the new administration. I don't think this quite qualifies as that, though it needs to be done, but some kind of a review of the weaponization of these agencies, right? In the same way that we never had accountability over what the IRS did during Lois Lerner's tenure under Barack Obama. I think we need to go back and have every agency sort of go through, all of these new agency heads go through. Maybe that's it. Maybe there needs to be a directive out of the White House to the inspectors general of each of these agencies to do a review of complaints of ideological bias on the part of these agencies, Jerry. That's at least my thought here.
Well, the thing is, too, is um, the Democrats have spent lots of time now going back to Obama and the IRS, but worse than that, the weaponization of law enforcement to
Right,
spy on the incoming Trump administration, and tangential or connected to this is this idea that Donald Trump doesn't have the authority, the duty, the right to tell political appointees and those who are hangers on in DOJ and elsewhere, you're fired.
right,
We're already seeing this that, oh, Donald Trump is threatening lawyers at DOJ. Well, he's not threatening them. A new
right,
administration is coming in, and I forget the classifications, but someone wrote this yesterday. If you're a Class A
right.
attorney at
Schedule if you are Schedule C or above, I believe it is that you
right,
can you can be fired at the
right,
discretion, right? These are
but
political appointee
but they're
jobs.
already starting to say, "Whoa, look at this! This is fascism." So when the president behaves like the president, if it's not your president, they're going to call him fascist.
It's interesting, right, Jerry, because this is the issue of the guardrails meme. Now, I got something I'm going to send over to you later today. I got a blog piece about this. It also gets into the general hypocrisy that we're going to see here, right? The big one of the other big talking points in the wake of the election was, oh, Donald Trump has no guardrails. Of course, Donald Trump has guardrails. One of the things that I point to in this blog is this Loper decision that came out, right? The left was all agog about the overturning of the Chevron doctrine by the Supreme Court this year, right? This idea that agencies have this expansive power to interpret statute in whatever way they want, as long as it has some tangential relationship to the statute, the interpretation would stand. Well, the Loper decision overturned this and says that no, regulatory interpretations have to have some root in the statute themselves. You can't go off half-cocked. Elizabeth Warren comes out and introduces a piece of legislation that basically tries to return that interpretive power back to the agencies. Well, as I point out in this piece that I just wrote, that I'm hoping you're going to republish,
And I will.
that the Loper decision constrains Donald Trump in the same way that it would constrain a Joe Biden administration or a Kamala Harris administration or a Tim Walz administration.
Well, this is the short-sightedness that proves maybe it's not short-sightedness. It's just
It
ends
proves.
justify the means.
Yes.
The fact is that the Democrats are for repeal of the filibuster,
Right.
unless they're in the minority.
100%.
Democrats are for packing the Supreme Court unless they lose the majority in the presidency. There is this.
Wait, you forgot one. You forgot one. And they're, of
Go.
course, in favor of having everybody get elected and have their electoral votes assigned by who wins the popular vote, unless Donald Trump wins the popular vote. Sorry, go
No,
ahead.
but that's very interesting. If the trend continues and Trump wins 76 million popular vote and wins 50% of the vote, if all these liberal states like Maryland and California and some others, if they have their way, Trump would have won this election with every electoral vote except for, I think, Virginia.
Virginia and there was one of the northeastern states that
All
he
right,
would
but
have won.
I
Yeah,
mean, it would have been a 500
right.
electoral vote landslide, and that's not the rule of law. That's
Right.
not respect for all voices in the public debate. This is insanity to me.
Yes, it is, and it'll be amazing how this
It's
disappears. In fact, somebody ought to ask our old friend Michael Steele about this issue, right?
well,
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. But go ahead.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
because
Well,
he's been promoting this.
right, but here's the thing. We've talked about this before. The reason why the last couple three election cycles Republicans lost the popular vote is because they weren't trying to win the popular vote.
Right.
Now, Donald Trump, this time, I would argue he did a whole country
He did.
campaign. He really was campaigning. Now, I'm not sure how much time he spent in California, but regardless, he was doing a whole campaign,
This
not just to the red states.
this
And
gets into a conversation I had with a buddy of mine, one of my Ben's brothers, about what Trump was doing and about Trump going to New York and Trump going to California and doing events. And he's like, "Oh, why is he doing this? He can't win this, blah, 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 blah." And the answer is because he knows it's highly unlikely that he can win California or New York outright, but he can run up the popular vote in those states in a very big way by showing up and by making his case directly to those people. You can argue, could he have done better in places like New Jersey? Might he have tipped the scales there, or New Hampshire? Well, of course he was in New Hampshire, and he did better than I want to say better than every recent Republican candidate up there. I also think, by the way, that the New Hampshire Libertarian Party has showed us what can be done when the Libertarians get their heads out of their posteriors and actually recognize that when you have a Republican who is the most libertarian Republican running in many, many years, and I know there are a lot of our libertarian friends who are going to cringe at this, but nevertheless, they did the right thing, and I think it helped pay off.
Now, I also think that we have to look at some of these states. California is redder
Yeah.
than it was 4 years ago, and it's because of this. I'm going to keep on using the term realignment.
Yes.
I have lived, I think, now through two realignments. The first was when I was very young, and Reagan in the 1980s really caused a massive realignment of ethnic Democrats, working class Democrats, hard hat Democrats joining the Republican Party
Right.
for real. Nixon, we saw this with Nixon a little bit, but Reagan really it realigned during Reagan, and I think that lasted for at least a generation And then things started to shift again
Right.
with the post George H.W. Bush presidency, and then the Doles and the Romneys and the McCains, and all of a
Jerry,
sudden
hold
the
on. You've made a brilliant point here. This
right,
is a really great political science point here because you're absolutely correct. Because the realignment happened when Ronald Reagan said we don't have to engage in the status quo. Just because we've done something in a particular way over the course of X number of years, whether it's appeasement or whether it is challenging the normal alignment of labor and management and
right.
corporations, and so we get Reagan and we get that shift there. George H.W. Bush comes in and he's an establishmentarian. And so, he says, I'm not going to raise taxes. Read my lips. He raises taxes. He's an internationalist. Bill Clinton creates a new status quo with the new Democrats, and that causes a shift there. George W. Bush was kind of a reaction to that, but you're right. The George W. Bushes to an extent, but the McCains and the Romneys, they are establishmentarians.
And
They are, yeah,
it's interesting about George W. Bush because uh, and you and I were at both at CEI, I think, when
yep,
he was going through his transition, and
yes,
friends of ours were being flown down to Texas or being, come to Texas and let's sit with George W. Bush. And I remember thinking when reports came back that he had some ideas, W.
right,
Bush, but I think that the 9/11 attack turned the world upside down. Number
right,
one, but even more so, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, the Democrats lost it.
yes,
They lost their minds. The first derangement syndrome was Gore and Florida,
100%,
and that shifted everything. And it was from that moment that George W. Bush wasn't going to get anything done
right,
except 9/11 happens.
right,
And that gave him a window where he did get some legislative things done, but they were political fixes. They were wonkish. It was the Medicare Part D legislation. It
right.
was things like that. It was AIDS. And George W. Bush, because of the resistance, that's when the resistance started.
I
It
agree.
was it was after Gore, during Bush, and Bush was almost like the wasted presidency.
Right. And this is why it's so insane. And again, we get into the pettiness of politics sometimes. The insane embracing of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden by the Bush Cheney camp, and they're turning around and embracing them simply because of political expediency, right? I mean, that's the thing that
Well, I'm
it's
not even
amazing
sure
to
if
me.
it's political expediency. It's personal vendetta.
Well, no. I think it's personal vendetta on the part of the Bush Cheney camp to go after the Democrats. I think the Democrats, it's about expediency
Oh, of
for
course,
them
yeah.
to embrace.
Well, we're hearing now from all from all circles, or all segments in the left movement, that the Cheney thing was a huge mistake.
Yeah, well, of course it was.
It was a huge mistake. Democrats didn't understand why they were doing this. You don't campaign with the devil, because
Well,
the Cheneys, the warmongers, the war profiteers
exactly.
are the devil.
Right. And it's one of those things where if you're trying to court, right, if you don't pick the Jewish guy from the really popular Jewish guy from Pennsylvania who can get you Pennsylvania as your VP pick because you don't want to piss off the Muslims, then having the guy who was essentially the poster child for Islamophobia have his daughter, be embraced. That's not the way you go about courting that
Well, I
voter. In
mean,
fact, I played audio of the
right.
the Muslim mayor in Michigan who said, "Yeah, they had me until this point." I mean, it really is crazy talk now.
But the thing is, so many mistakes. I'm seeing more and more legacy media, progressive pundits say that, this really was a good campaign. She ran a good campaign, but it's the racism and the
Right.
sexism. And and then you're seeing
It was
this
a
trickle
flawless
down.
campaign,
You're
Jerry,
seeing
except for all the flaws.
right. You're seeing this trickle down where folks are putting out there, you know what? I'm happy that I'm angry. It
Yes.
shows that I have a good heart. I'm glad that I hate the Trump supporters. It shows that I have empathy
Right. I've seen
for the
these
least of
memes.
these. And
Yeah.
again, they here we go. It's this again derangement syndrome where your hatred, your anger, your vitriol, you wear as a badge of honor instead
Right.
of learning that this is part of the reason you lost. And just to say real quick, the Harris campaign, right, raised $1 billion, 20 million in debt. It turns out she paid
Right.
entertainers millions of dollars to come to her event. She paid Oprah Winfrey $1 million.
Right.
I mean, that's a scandal.
Well, it is. It is
Imagine if it turns out that the Trump campaign paid Joe Rogan $5 million.
100% right. Of
This
course.
would be
Right.
this would be impeachable.
Right.
We'd be talking
Or
about impeachment again.
any of the bloggers out there, the left would be screaming to high heaven. That's absolutely true. And again, it is astounding to me. Now, I had listeners who were texting in saying, "Why are you telling the Democrats why they lost?" And I think, well, part of it is because they're never going to listen to me.
Right.
Right. Even though AOC was out there soliciting opinions on what podcasts to listen to, and I'm very tempted to tell her to listen to Andrew and Jerry Save the World. Hey, AOC, two Bronx guys here. We love you. We'd love for you to listen to the show. But the point is, in
Too
the
bad
end,
she's really from Westchester.
well, okay, that something just down the road from you. Yeah, that's right, Yorktown Heights. But the point is, in all of this, I get it. I get what they were. The strategy was very simple and straightforward. Um, they have essentially 100 days to do this. They need to maintain the sugar high, right? Remember, this was what we were talking about. They had to maintain the sugar high through the campaign, and in order to do that, well, you need all the glitz and glam. But they forget that the American people. I give the American electorate a lot more credit than the left does. Again, it's common sense. They can smell when something, I've spent a lot of time talking about the issue of cognitive dissonance, right? Empirically, voters can tell when they're being lied to, right? They know when something doesn't match. Oh, everything's fine in the energy sector of the economy, except gas is more expensive than it was, when this guy took office. Oh, inflation is not real, or it's only transitory. Well, we know that that's not true. So like that, I mean, when they're being told this nonsense about the campaign, they can see through that. So which was the biggest mistake, Jerry? I guess that's my question here. Which was the biggest mistake that Kamala Harris made throughout this process?
I think focusing on Donald Trump.
Mm.
I think her biggest mistake, the campaign's biggest mistake, was calling him Hitler and he's a fascist. He's going to take away your rights because everyone in America, love him, hate him, don't care about him, you know him. The Donald Trump persona is baked in. Number one, number two, he was president,
Yeah.
and he wasn't a fascist, and
Right.
we didn't have in the streets of America. We did not have an insurrection.
And
That's
and
another thing,
and
and that was their biggest mistake, calling him an insurrectionist, calling him a fascist. And here's the thing, I'll let you,
please,
I'll
yeah,
let you
go ahead.
comment, and that is, you know, those are very serious charges.
Right.
And I know this is kind of a funny thing to say, but if you truly believe that he was a fascist, then why are you still here?
Right.
If you were a Jew in Germany in 1936 and you could still get out, what did you do?
Yeah.
You got out
Yes.
if you're able to. I mean, if this man is a fascist, we're told that we were told that he is an existential threat to democracy. He's going to take away your rights. I was in an argument with someone very close to me just recently about this, and this person said, "Well, he's going to take away my rights." What rights?
Right.
Like what? What? I mean, your right to murder a child in the
We
womb
had
is.
to explain to somebody recently
But
that
what rights?
Donald Trump is not going to take away the rights to get, a birth control. for instance, right?
Well,
Which
then they
is,
do. I like how that even. All right, I said. Let me just say this one last thing.
yeah,
That was the first mistake was focusing on Trump. A very close second was the scaremongering.
right, absolutely. And well, they go
And
hand in
yeah,
hand. And
right.
and that's just
But no,
it,
but the
right? Because
scaremongering, like
remember,
tell
Kamala's message was, right, the message was, I am the change candidate, but she can't be the change candidate because she
right.
can't disagree with
But
anything
this
that
was
Joe
a
Biden
woman
did.
who was telling women if they have a miscarriage, they've committed a crime.
Right, right. They're going to be prosecuted.
This is a
Yeah,
woman who
absolutely. Right,
said to old
right,
people, Trump's going to take away your Social Security.
right.
This is a person who was telling
But
young
here's
couples who couldn't get pregnant that he was going to somehow take away your
IVF. Yeah,
IVF. I'm sorry,
IVF and IUD.
but
Yes,
these
and
lies
I know those two things are different.
actually hurt Americans.
Right.
So she was the Democrats, the legacy media was willing to hurt. Literally, there were two women in Georgia who died. They didn't
Yes.
seek medical attention because they took an abortion pill and they were misled about what was legal and not legal in the
Right.
state of Georgia. Two women died. There's literal blood on the hands of Democrats
So
because they scared people.
right. But let me go back to this issue of the lies and the change, and then I'm gonna take a slightly different tack in terms of the biggest mistake. But running that you want to turn the page away from the chaos of the Donald Trump years. That's all your fault. I mean, that's the thing. And Americans understood this implicitly. If you wanted to get rid of Donald Trump, just stop talking about Donald Trump, right? Stop making him the boogeyman, because he's got this,
And
oppositional
and
defiance
Andrew,
thing going on.
what did it get them? Because at the end of the day, Joe Biden, Barack Obama,
Joe
uh,
Byron.
Joe Joe Scarborough, the legacy media, uh, they made Trump into this
Right.
boogeyman. But what was the point of it?
Well, the
And
point
at the end
was
of the
to
day, what
to
was the point
scare
of
the
it?
point was to scare people into not voting for the guy, right? Don't be stupid, be a smarty, come and join the Nazi party, right? It's you don't want to be part of the basket of deplorables, so you're going to come and vote for us
Why haven't they learned their lesson?
because they can't, right? Because again, they can't you can't remember it's the old adage from prosecutorial 101, right? If you have the law on your side, argue the law.
Yeah.
If you have the facts on your side, argue the facts. And if you have neither on your side, argue loudly. I mean, there's a lot of variations on that. So they were just arguing loudly about this. But you're right, it didn't get them anything. Let me just say, I would say that from day one, the single biggest mistake was picking Tim Walz as your running mate. Now, maybe you had no other choices, but that alone, and let me explain why. Because
That
it's
guy
not
turned out to be a disaster.
100% a disaster because he didn't get them what they wanted, right? He won Minnesota, but they lost Wisconsin, they lost Michigan, they lost the Dakotas. But the point is, you lost the guy who could have won you Pennsylvania and could have probably won you Michigan. Even if the fact that he's Jewish, and again, as someone who is, born and raised Jewish, this is not me making some statement about his ethnic and religious heritage. But the point is, in the end, right, the role of the vice presidential candidate is to be able to articulate the message in a way that sometimes the candidate himself or herself can't do. And Tim Walz
And I'm thinking of
failed.
someone who did. I'm thinking of someone who did that.
Yes, JD
J.D.
Vance.
Vance was
Right,
a
100%.
brilliant pick.
Yeah, and I had, I sat there and I had friends, pundits we know who were like, oh, I'm not so sure about this.
Oh,
I'm like,
he's
just watch. The
fantastic.
man can articulate a message. He is the future of the Republican Party.
Yes,
And
that's it.
that's why.
You just
Right,
said it.
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
This proves the realignment,
Yes.
and that is the Republican Party moving forward is going to be the party of working class Americans, the party of entrepreneurs and small businesses, of store clerks and hard hats. It's going to be the party of mobility, the party
It's
of
the
creating
party
wealth.
of people who are in Appalachia or people who are in places like Appalachia who are born into poverty and who have lifted themselves
It's
up by their bootstraps and see the
this
American dream in
again.
front of them.
Andrew Langer, when I was a kid, you and I are of the same generation,
Yeah,
growing up in the 80s, and I believed that I could be president. I
right,
believed I could do anything. I think we were the last, I think Gen X is the last generation to believe that.
right.
I think we're going to believe it again.
I think,
That's
and I
that's
think,
that that's
and I
the
think you're right.
realignments.
And I think
That's the
this idea,
realignments.
it's this idea, by the way, you and
And by
I
the way, this is not because of Donald Trump. It's,
no,
it, it is because of the issues, but it's about the people who rallied around Trump.
that's the
This
thing. The
is, yeah, this is,
coalition
yes,
around him, right? The
yes.
JD Vances, the Tulsi Gabbards, even to some extent, the Robert F. Kennedys, which we can
The
talk about
Joe
if you want.
Rogans, the
Yes.
the JD Vances,
So
I mean, this
here's
is
the thing that
amazing.
I had forgotten about, Jerry. So I got a good buddy who was on the America 250th anniversary celebration committee, like the commission that was
Yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah.
this. And when Joe Biden came in, he was essentially kicked off of the commission because they wanted more Democratic seats. I had forgotten that part and parcel, and I know it's a stupid little issue. Well, actually, I don't think it's so stupid, but other folks might think it's stupid. The fact that America is going to be celebrating its 250th anniversary, and this gets into your point about believing in America. The bicentennial was very important in my upbringing, the formulation as to who I am. I learned a great deal about America, even as a 5 year old in 1976.
Yeah.
And it carried with me the principles upon which this nation was founded. The idea that Kamala Harris was going to be president and ran this campaign, which was essentially about hating America, was going to be president during this. Who knows what kind of woke, and pardon me, Geraldine, for saying this, what kind of woke bullshit was going to be perpetrated by this
Yeah.
administration moving into it. Donald Trump comes in, and one of the first things he says is, oh, hey, by the way, we've got this 250th anniversary next year, and it's going to be an out and out celebration of America.
Right.
Now, I'm not so sure that everybody can travel to Iowa for a massive America fair. I'm certainly going to try, but nevertheless, right? I mean, I'm resting a little easier knowing that folks who genuinely love America and want to talk about why America is the greatest nation on earth, right? That's very big for me.
Let me just take a slight turn here,
Please.
because we've laid out what the future of the Republican Party is. It's a broad party. It's a diverse party. It's a party of working Americans, entrepreneurs. It's again, it's a party of women, of men, of military, of star clerks, of startup firms. This is what it is. It's a party that will favor technology and modernity, but also affordable energy and wealth. This is it. What's the future of the Democratic Party?
Well, that's the fundamental
That's the
issue,
bigger
right?
question, isn't it?
Well, it's one of those things when you paint yourself into a corner, right? When you paint yourself into a corner on all of these issues, right, where it has to be black or white, where it has to be my way or the highway, and you don't engage in that pluralism or populism, it creates you when you have a party that is running against common sense and the feelings. Now, here's the thing, right? I think the only future that the Democratic Party has, unless they're willing to sort of own up and recognize and they're willing to translate their ideas into ways that are palpable to the average American voter, they are an opposition party for the longest time in which they're merely running against the status quo, right?
You
And
know,
unless they have
yeah.
some other kinds of ideas, or alternatively, or well, no, not alternatively, and Republicans feed into this if they continue to go down the road, if they don't come together, if there's too much infighting and they fail on these other issues, or if they can sort of manufacture a crisis. Let me just say this, Jerry. One of the most compelling videos or pieces of audio that I played last week was whoever had taken the clips of Democrats talking about the threat to democracy and used AI
Yeah,
to
bureaucracy.
substitute bureaucracy for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I saw that.
Right. If the bureaucracy can turn around and frustrate the advancements that Donald Trump and Team Trump are promising moving into this election, that creates problems
Well,
down the road, right?
let me raise
Hold
a
on, if an
question for you.
establishmentarian becomes head of the Senate, becomes Senate Majority Leader and is able to frustrate nominees,
Yeah, but you
that's a
say
problem.
that, but we know the three nominees. I think one, two, three. They're going either
Right.
either one or any of the three are fine.
Uh,
I don't know. We're arguing over silly things
no,
now.
no, 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 no.
What I mean,
But
Thune's not going to stop the Trump agenda, and Cornyn's not going to stop the Trump agenda, and Rick Scott's is a conservative, but he's not going to be all in on Trump all the time. I think we create these silly fights like with Marco Rubio. There were some people actually saying,
oh
"Well,
yeah,
Marco Rubio, well, he's too establishment." Get
right.
over yourself. Let's move forward. Let me say this though. Um, I think we have to stop those fights before they really
Yes, but
break
we
out.
are. This is the problem: is that we are the stupid party in that
We
regard.
are, yes,
Yes, go
but
ahead.
but here's the thing: the Democrats. I'll say this, and today it's 2024. They will never, ever, ever, ever nominate Josh Shapiro. The Democratic Party is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, well,
The leadership it is. They hate Jews. They hate Jews. The AOCs of the party, which is now the majority of the party, hate Jews, hate Israel.
yeah,
They
the
do,
Rashida Tlaibs, et
yes,
cetera. Right.
and I
Yes,
mean, and the Kamala Harris's.
Kamala Harris's.
I
Yes,
mean, all right. So unfortunately, a moderate, good governor from Pennsylvania, and there are things that Josh Shapiro does in PA that I could probably support.
right.
He's never going to get the nomination.
Yeah,
Um, that's number one. Number
Jared
two,
Polis. Same thing with Jared Polis.
yeah. Number two,
Yeah,
if you look at the resistance that's developing, right? It's the Gavin Newsom, it's the Wes Moore. Wes Moore has doubled down on progressive orthodoxy in a way that is different than the first a couple of years of his governorship. This is a guy who is talking in the language of warfare
yes,
against his fellow Americans. He's saying that we will defend our rights. We'll have your back. We're not going to let this threat happen. Who's the threat?
yeah.
What rights are again? He's using this language of ideological warfare, and I think that gets him the nomination, but gets him crushed in a general election. I
Here's the funny thing, right? Is that Westmore thinks he's Barack Obama when Westmore really is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris
Yes.
with a military career. That's just it. Barack Obama was brilliant and affable, and more to the point, his personality was backed
And
up.
he ran as a
Right,
moderate.
right.
Remember that.
Yeah,
In 2007, 2008, he moderated himself. Like we
right,
knew who he was, but he purposefully moderated himself. Wes Moore doesn't have the wisdom to do that.
right,
And
right.
again, yeah,
Right, but no, actually, it's a great point, Jerry, because what it gets into is it is like a lot of these Maryland politicians, whether it's Wes Moore or
they're
Angela
they're
also
in the
Brooks,
bubble. They're in the
or
bubble.
exactly Brandon Scott. It's all goes back to Martin O'Malley. Martin O'Malley was a very popular governor, for Maryland. Once he stepped onto that national stage, he was about as popular as Kamala Harris. And this also gets into the other part of it, right? Which is Kamala Harris. It's not just that we're talking about the lack of democracy in the primary by nominating someone or anointing someone to be your nominee who didn't make her way out of the primary. What we're pointing out is she was so wildly unpopular even amongst her fellow Democrats that she didn't go anywhere. Now, that being said, Wes Moore, I think, could get the nomination of his party. Now, 6 years after, or at that point, it'll be what, 9 years after
I
Kamala
I, th
Harris
I
ran.
think I think Republicans would be very smart to have a 2028 project
Yes.
where they begin to take notice, take a record, comment, build the intellectual ammunition that will push against a
Right.
Westmore candidacy. And
Man,
there are others in
Jerry,
the party.
I cannot wait for the Vance Moore debates in 2028.
Yeah.
I am just, I am so excited for this.
But
Uh,
the Democrats have to decide if they're going to be the progressive Westmore party or are they going to be more of the Shapiro, Jared Polis? Polis is, business friendly, um, has some libertarian leanings. He's the
Yeah.
governor of Colorado, of course. He was a longtime congressman. Um, there are others, I guess. Unfortunately, the party is becoming so base. There are very few. All the moderates, all the intellectual and political diversity is on the right now.
See, this is why Republicans, as I've said, need to embrace this common sense moniker and really move it forward in that regard and start framing. Let me just talk about this for
I
just a
would
second.
reclaim the word liberal.
I like that too, but my point in all of this is, as I said back in 2013, 2012 timeframe, um, keeping taxes low is just common sense. Not having boys play girls sports is just common sense. Make it really clear, tie the two things together. That way, the left can't turn around and say raising taxes is just common sense.
Yeah.
All of these other things. And anyway, it's some of this is about marketing. So there you go. Sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
I look, I think we have a lot to cover and to comment on in the next couple of years. The Republicans have 2 years
Yes.
to make serious reforms on the regulatory stage, on taxes, on spending. We didn't talk anything about spending. We never do. I mean, not you and I, but I'm just saying conservatives.
Right.
We have a spending crisis. We have a border
100%.
crisis. We have a spending crisis. We have an energy crisis insofar as we have this. It's acceptable or accepted that we must do A, B, or C Green New Deal to deal with climate. That has to be broken.
Right.
This idea that we can somehow change the Earth's climate by keeping people poor and energy poor and taking away mobility. It's funny. I talk to folks who are this is anecdotal, but you talk to someone who's all into climate change, and then you say, well, okay, would you be willing to live in a city, in a building, only using public transportation? If you wanted to visit your grandparents or family out of state, you would have to get permission to
Mm.
travel. And they're like, well, that's ridiculous. I said, that's the Green New Deal.
Right. This
This
gets
is
into
it.
the,
Yeah.
that's the thing that a lot of folks, obviously this was too in the weeds for the average voter to sort of follow. But right, I mean, if you have a Tim Walz as vice president of the United States, all of a sudden it doesn't become so ridiculous, this idea of implementing a CCP style
Yeah.
social crediting system here at
Yes.
home, where your privileges are based upon how you live your life, right? That's the other part of it. And
No,
the other
Andrew.
one, hold on. One of the other memes I've seen are people are saying, I'm more concerned about the role Elon Musk is going to play in all of this than I am of Donald Trump. You know something? If we could get Elon Musk's brilliant brain to start focusing on deployment of nuclear power around the country, we could cut our carbon emissions and have a rebirth of
Right.
inexpensive, electricity. And then maybe we could get down this road, right? Get Elon Musk and other big brains focusing on how to strengthen our roads so we can have an electric
Yeah.
fleet.
But but
Bring
but
down
but
the cost there. Go
yeah,
ahead.
but here's the thing too, right? There's a reason why the automobile overtook the horse and buggy,
Right.
because the market, the people that wanted the technology. What's
Absolutely.
what's the problem now is that you have the bureaucracy and you have the political left forcing EVs or solar energy, and these are not ready for prime time
Right.
energy sources right now. And the sooner we realize that, the better off working Americans will be. Again, talking about the kind of the Gavin Newsom's Wes Moore Democratic Party, they're all about uh, fossil fuel free future, net zero
Right.
future. Now, they're not talking about nuclear energy.
No.
They're talking about starving their constituents
Right.
of energy, which means because you need fossil fuels and petroleum products, you need energy for healthcare, for housing, for mobility. And so essentially they're telling their working class, and this is something that the Republicans haven't learned the language yet. Whenever you hear net zero, uh, you should hear rising housing costs,
Right.
rising rents. Whenever you hear net
Rising food
zero,
costs.
food costs,
Right.
limited access to medicine,
Right.
limited access to healthcare. There are 6,000 products that we use daily, that Americans use daily, that would either become luxury items, only the rich could afford them, or they would go away.
And time out for a second, just real quick on this, because now we're talking science and engineering here, and we're talking about pollution and waste. Because as Jerry points out, we don't just extract oil from the ground to use to fuel our cars, but there are these myriad, I would say infinite uses for petroleum products that are out there, or products that are based on our petroleum industry, whether or not it's plastics or fertilizer or a whole
Medical
host of things,
devices.
and medical devices. And the point is, so you're telling me, and this is something that the left has never, nobody has really asked them, at least publicly. So you're telling us that we're going to extract oil from the ground for all of these things, but the one thing we're not going to use it for, the byproducts of this, whether or not it's methane or something else, we're not going to use those to power our planet. So what are we going to do with it? Just sort of capture it somewhere? It was something that somebody pointed out to me as we were talking about this, right? Even if you have a car that is gasoline free, you still need petroleum products to be used as lubricants for the parts in that car. And so what you're going to have grease or WD-40 or
Or yeah,
whatever it is, some brand. I know
and
it's not WD.
in the
Sorry, go ahead.
manufacturing of these cars.
Right.
But this is the problem. We allow the legacy media, we allow the progressive left to say things, it goes unchecked.
Right.
When a Westmore says they're coming after your rights, there should be some journalist somewhere to say, Mr. Governor, what rights?
In the same way, they fact check ad infinitum.
Right.
They're eating your dogs. They're eating your cats. Eat the cats. Eat the cats. Right. They fact check that one in ad infinitum, and yet they won't fact check the other thing. Jerry, listen, I know you're. It's a Tuesday as we're recording this. You're back on Sundays. I am at least off for the time being on daily radio. I will be back this Thursday in for Tony Katz on WIBC and nationally syndicated. You're back on Sunday. What else do you have going on, my friend?
Well, I mean, it's still post-election, so it's real clear we're going through all kinds of ideas for specials, for symposia, for real clear investigations. One thing is, it'd be nice to be able to equip the Trump administration with investigatory pieces
Here, here.
on energy, on health,
On
look.
the abuses of power.
Yes, on
Yeah.
censorship. I think arguably, because there are many important issues, the idea that the left wants to censor their opponents, and they're still talking about it.
100%.
Even now that they've lost, they're saying, well, we need to put regulation on speech on
Hey,
social media.
I get it,
We got to
man.
push
If
back
you
on that.
hold on, if you lost an election because your opponent was talking too much and speaking the truth, you want to silence your opponent. I get this. I don't agree with it, but I get. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Business
I
of
didn't.
America, my friend. You got a
Yeah,
business of America this week.
and I'm yes, I'm hoping that I'm hoping the Republicans for the next 2 years really get some things done, because the country, we have so many crises
Can I
right
quote you on
now.
that? Jerry Rogers says, "I really hope the Republicans get some things done."
I wish I
Headline.
could say, with great confidence they will,
Oh no.
but they must.
Yes.
Here my last word. I love it from the movie with Christopher Walken, where they go into a bunker because they think World War III happened, the nuclear holocaust,
Yeah.
and they go into this bunker, and he's trying to explain to his son baseball,
Yes.
and his son has never seen baseball, and so his son is like, why does he have to run to first? Why does he have to tag the bag? And all the father could say is, because he must. And then of course, he comes out of the bunker and watches his first baseball game and says, "Now I get it. Now
There
I
you
get
go.
it."
Yes.
I think that I don't want to hear about Republicans might do this, could do this, a prelude here. It's like
Just do
baseball.
it.
Just do it.
Yeah. Get it done.
You must.
The rent is too damn high.
Yeah.
Agreed wholeheartedly. So you got a business of America this week.
I do. I do. Last week I had two cancellations because of the election, because of other reasons,
Oh yes.
and I need to catch up.
No, I've got, in fact, I've just rescheduled some stuff that we had postponed because of the election. I, of course, had a new episode of the Lunch Hour podcast on Monday. I interviewed Joe Allen, the executive director of the Buy Dole Coalition, talking about that law. It's a really fun conversation.
Send
Um,
that to me if I don't have
I
it, and
will.
I'll put it up at Real Clear Health.
Absolutely. Got a very nice shout out from Steve Forbes, by the way, for a piece
That's
that I did
great.
last week, which was
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, and as I said, I'm in for Tony Katz. Eat the Cats, eat the Cats on Thursday, noon to 3 p.m. If he doesn't have that as a bumper, he should. Jerry, what do you want folks to do?
Oh, find the truth, plant your feet, and stand firm.
Have a
God bless
great
you.
God bless, and have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please stay safe.